In the mountains of southwest Virginia, the town of Pocahontas sits quietly crumbling. Time, weather, and the lack of economic viability have created a slow demolition by neglect of some of the most unique and historically significant architectural assets relating to the birth of the Appalachian coal industry. On a trip through the streets of Pocahontas, you are likely to see well-kept white clapboard houses with diligently manicured lawns juxtaposed with a crumbling empty storefront and long since abandoned stone churches. Such is the dichotomy. A few questions come to mind. What is this place? Why is it here? Will it remain for future generations to see?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
The last time we were here, that was a building.
From a hole in the back of his blacksmith shop, Jordan Nelson sold coal at a penny a bushel, and the mountain man toted it home on muleback. One day a customer struggled up the trail leading an ox wagon. As he moved away with a full load, Aunt Betsy Thompson, a neighbor, put her foot down. "This must be stopped," she declared. "The coal will run out. There won't be enough for us here in the hollow." From the time the town of Pocahontas was founded in 1881, much of its economic and social development was closely linked to the great Pocahontas coal field.
Right here, if you look at 10 feet, an average coal seam is from 3 to 6 feet tall. 6 foot is considered extremely high coal.
The Pocahontas coal field is part of the Great Appalachian Coal Field, comprising a 900 square mile coal producing area located in the Appalachian Plateau of southern West Virginia and southwestern Virginia.
Some places in here it goes up to 13 feet, and other places it goes up to 23 feet. In places that they call swags, it's just a dip in the coal seam.
I think it's important to understand the geologic resources that drew people to Pocahontas, where it was the Pocahontas seam of coal, which really defies political boundaries. And so we're talking about McDowell County, West Virginia, and Tazewell County, Virginia.
The Pocahontas number 1 mine located in Pocahontas, Virginia, was the original mine of the Pocahontas coal field.
You're standing right in the middle of the world's largest coal seam. This is the Pocahontas number 3 seam. It goes from Pennsylvania all the way to Alabama.
Those who came to seek work in the mines formed the population of the town of Pocahontas.
That coincided with really the beginning of the migration of Eastern Europeans into the United States.
A number of Hungarian, German, and Welsh immigrants arrived there when the Southwest Virginia Improvement Company opened the first mine in the Pocahontas coal field in 1883.
And so people came from Italy, Eastern Europe, and Southern Europe as well. The journey was like these people principally came as most all the other immigrants came during those times, and they came through the port of New York, through New York Harbor and through Ellis Island. And if they had kinfolks already in Pocahontas or Keystone or somewhere in McDowell County, they said, we're going to go and join them, fathers that had gone ahead, brothers that had gone ahead, something like that. If they didn't, the Baldwin Felts Agency and other labor procurement companies had contracts with the coal companies and met the met the folks at Ellis Island and said, well, if you don't have anywhere to go, and of course they had to have a destination to be allowed into the country, and they said, well, we will provide you passage to West Virginia. And they came principally because of the labor shortage. There was also a great influx of persons of color. At that time, sharecropping and racial violence was making life unbelievably difficult for persons of color in the Deep South, and a great many of those came to the Pocahontas coal fields as well. I think it's a diverse region, much more diverse than people give it credit for.
By the early 20th century, there were as many as 2,000 Hungarians blending with African Americans and native mountaineers from other Appalachian communities to create a unique society.
In McDowell County, the population in 1890 was about 7,000 people. But by 1900, it was over 18,000 people. And by 1910, it was 47,000 people. And by 1920, it was 68,000 people or more. So for 30 years there, I'm not really sure you could say it was in waves. I think it came in a torrent.
As a result of all of the coal that was sent out of the coal mines in these two states, a whole, not only industry, but a whole population boomed. Immediately there were people from all over the world, literally, who came to these two small communities of maybe about 10 or 20 people.
There were tensions, of course, and conflicts, and a lot of struggle like that. But over time, it formed into a cohesive, strong community. And there were, I guess you could say, every family had the heritage that they brought with them, but they also developed this new heritage, this coal field, rich, diverse culture that they celebrated.
They came from Hungary, from England, from Wales, from Yugoslavia, from Tennessee and Virginia and North Carolina and New York State, from states, all the states in the eastern part of this country.
The population explosion drew many people to Pocahontas in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The town grew to its peak of nearly 5,000 residents during this time period. It built a large company store, a world-class opera house, and many churches and temples. It imported iron facades for its storefront. Pocahontas was a popular destination for the huge population surrounding it as well. At one time, it boasted between 23 and 28 saloons. What are some of the characteristics they brought, and what do we see today, the remnants of that?
In Elkhorn, there is a church with an onion dome, a Russian Orthodox church, and up until 10, 15 years ago, they conducted services there in Russian. There are, for a long time, going into Welch from the south along the old road there, you'd pass the Jewish synagogue, and there were a number of Jewish synagogues in the area. And you see them in the cemeteries, Jewish cemeteries.
The immigrants who came to seek work in the mines added to the diversity of the town's early makeup and still contribute to the rich cultural traditions present today.
Interestingly enough, my grandparents lived over there, and just yesterday we had a fresh green salad, and I made a salad dressing on it that my grandmother had gotten from an Italian immigrant, the family of an Italian immigrant back in the 30s and the 40s. So, it comes in ways in architecture, it comes in ways in culture, and in just sort of those traces and the legacy of those memories.
Their diversity is evident in the variety of churches scattered around town. The Pocahontas Baptist Church stands today as the oldest building in town that holds its original architectural attributes. It was built in 1882. St. Elizabeth's Roman Catholic Church features 10 life-size murals painted in 1919 by Cincinnati artist Theodore Brad. It also holds an annual Hungarian cabbage roll dinner to honor the European heritage of the coal fields. The industrial survey conducted in 1929 warned that it would become necessary for the town of Pocahontas to attract other forms of manufacturing if the population was to be maintained. However, the town had relied heavily on the coal industry and was ill prepared for the changes and transformations that would result from the retirement of the Pocahontas No. 1 mine in 1955. During the transition years in the 1950s, the Pocahontas Fuel Company began to sell off its residential property and either discharged or transferred most of its employees. The coal industry that had dominated the life of the community from its earliest years had declined, and as a result there began a decline in the population and economic conditions of the community. The population of Pocahontas, which had totaled 2,410 people in 1950, had decreased to 1,313 by 1960. To live during the vibrant days of Pocahontas is not a story a building can tell completely. The real treasures of this time can only be found in the memories of its residents.
Papa would take us through the mine, and he would tell us these stories about coal mining and the mine and the coal. And I was little, I didn't care nothing. I would lay in the back seat basically and pray to God. He would stop. I didn't want to hear it no more. And the ironic thing is, I'd give anything today, anything, to hear one of those stories.
This is a picture of my family when they first arrived in Pocahontas.
My father worked in the coal mine for close to 40 years.
I started to work for Pocahontas Fuel Company on Groundhog Day, 1935.
I worked in the mines almost 30 years.
Myrtle Hampton, she married Charlie Lovelace.
My dad's name was Harry Hilton. He moved in this town back in the 30s and started working in the mines up here in Pocahontas mines.
I moved here from Townsville, Virginia. I was working for Consol, or Pocahontas Fuel Company at the time, and my wife was a school teacher in Townsville.
My parents was Frank and Della Bailey. They live over here on Pilchester Mountain, and he was originally from Callisville. So he come out and got a job in the coal mines. He went into the coal mines here in, I think it's 1926.
This is my sister Jean Lovelace, my brother Wesley Lovelace.
Our house is what they call my father. I'm a third generation miner.
They were all coal miners.
Father's father was William Butt, who had the first home in Pocahontas. First child born was by William Butt, and the child's name was Minnie Pocahontas Butt.
We used to come down to the company store over here that's now falling down. We used to go in there and check to see if my dad had worked the next day.
Sat in the classroom, and we couldn't think about studying on the Monday after Thanksgiving because we were so excited. We knew we were going to get to come to the company store and to Elliot's and to Whitaker's and Mustard's, and they would all have their Christmas toys out.
My father's store was next to the Cricket, which was a saloon. Back in the early days, there was 27 saloons in Pocahontas.
We would walk about 4 miles from the mountain down to here.
Not that far, it's about 2 miles.
Well, once you're down the mountain.
Well, down and back is
okay.
I live in Boston.
Bosbane? How long have you been
All my life.
All your life?
We took turns to come to town on Saturday with them, and the place was so busy and bustling, and it was hard to cross the street.
And look and see and pick out what we wanted for Christmas and then go home and tell our parents.
I know when you get sick, Dr. Ballard would come to your house and you could hear him whistling.
The mines up there years ago to drive through it, and the electric shop was on up above the mines, and I'd be sleeping up there on the hill.
U.S. Steel had several mines in the area. That's where all of the crowds came from, I guess.
Pocahontas, Virginia was the most wonderful place to grow up.
It sticks in my mind the most, I guess, is how crowded the town used to be.
The town also features a registered Virginia historic site, the Pocahontas Cemetery. The cemetery features graves that are over 100 years old and a mass grave of coal miners killed in a mine explosion back in 1884.
2 years after they opened, March 13th, 1884, they had their first explosion. When the mine exploded, they knew there was 114 men in there. And if you drive through town, you'll see the Butt and Company coffin. That man, his name is William Butt. He was a carpenter. He built all the kitchen cabinets for the coal company, for the coal houses. And they made him build 114 coffins.
When the explosion occurred, it was such a violent explosion, all the men in the mine were killed. It was impossible to go in and get them out. They had to extinguish the fires, and it took approximately 6 weeks to put out the fires, and they flooded the mine, and then to reduce the water volume in the mine so they could go in and recover the bodies.
When they opened up the mine and let the water out, 3 bodies come out. The rest were body parts.
So in this area in front of me is where they dug the trenches or the mass grave to bury the miners.
So William Butt didn't need all those coffins. He used 111 coffins he didn't use. So at that point, they turned him into the undertaker.
On Thursdays and Fridays, the miners would sometimes bring in other members of their family that did not ordinarily work in the mines, neighbors, friends, and children, and help them load coal to build up their tonnage. So there may well have been more than 114.
Who are those 3 up there?
Those are Italians up there. Mr. Sonny Worth, he's 80 years old. He has been replotting and resurveying the cemetery. And I and Mrs. Edna Drozic and other people helped him replot and resurvey the cemetery. He considers this cemetery to be the most unusual cemetery in the eastern of the United States, and he is a member of the Association of Gravestone Studies. John Dinsmore, Sergeant, Company B, 15th Regiment, West Virginia Infantry, Civil War. Union soldier. Look straight up the hill to Butt. See Butt up there?
I do.
Butt is a Confederate veteran. In Pocahontas in 1881, parents of the first white child born in Pocahontas. In this, what's in this section. Doesn't have her name, but I know what her name was. It was Minnie Pocahontas Butt. And Natishka, that means here lies. That's Hungarian. They just laid it on the ground. Now we have restored a lot of these stones as much as we can, but every time we get some up, somebody always comes along and knocks one down. And this is the steps to the summer house chapel. To be a chapel where they would have, you know, graveside services and stuff. Now right down here are some of the, here's a little group of Russians. Let's see. Now it sort of looks like it's Greek, but it's not. That's old Russian, and the reason I know, I was in the cemetery when an Orthodox priest was in here, and I asked him about, because I saw him around these graves, and he says, this was my great-great grandfather. And he says, this is not Greek. It says, this is the old Russian before the Russian Revolution. It says, when the Bolsheviks took over, they modernized the alphabet. In the picture of the small child.
I never have been in that
Yeah,
as
I
long as
got
I've
one of
lived
those at
here.
home. I forgot about
That
it.
Methodist church.
You got one of those, didn't you? I got one.
Oh, look at that. All these people.
Yeah. A lot of them are not living no more.
Oh, no. Yeah. Is that you?
Mm-hmm. My husband.
Pat was mayor at the farm.
At the Opera House?
Yeah, but it's not handicap accessible.
No.
So
The steps to go up it to get to it, didn't
yeah, they used to have good dinner theater programs up there.
They would have a play?
They had dinner and then they had a play.
What kind of plays did you see?
Well,
You were interested in the dinner, weren't you?
no, not exactly.
If these old buildings would have been kept up, they'd really been something.
The building that collapsed in the middle of town was the company store, built in 1883 and listed on the APVA Preservation Virginia's Most Endangered Sites in 2005. And then they would bring them and pay them in
They paid them
script.
script, not American money, so they couldn't
Right.
leave.
It was only good in the company store. Company.
Yeah, and they couldn't go to the next little town and they had to spend it here at the company store that just fell. Yeah, that's why I wanted to preserve that store. That's a lot of history there.
From the belly of that mountain, you can hear the echoes of busy hands and heavy hearts of a story that once was. Machines made my hands idle and took supper from my table. Oh, to be a miner, no work, but I'm still able. Pocahontas.
Why can't we receive help? West Virginia has gotten like $4.5 million for them to build just a replica of a company store over at the exhibition mines in Beckley. Why couldn't we get money like that to save our original historical company store? Virginia is such a rich state. I can't understand why that they have forgotten us.
We used to have a bus that runs from Gore to Bluefield so many times a day. We had a train we could ride to Pocahontas and back to Boston. Boy, I know.
Modern-day Pocahontas continues to work at the local and state level to answer the questions of how to best serve the declining population and how to preserve the rich history of its fading architecture and landmarks. The people of this region continue to honor the heritage of the energy-based company that brought the town into existence, but more so they continue to honor the hard work and sacrifice of the men and women that comprise this unique coal culture.
Big parade that day. We feed them free lunch. They come down here, we take them through the mine and take their families through the mine. It's basically a day to honor the coal miners.
Technology. The battery to the microphone has gone dead. I do not need a microphone.
This entire community turned out to fight closing a school whose auditorium wouldn't hold half the people that actually showed up. The entire community stood together, unified with one goal. The time has come to stand yet again.
The Labor Day celebration does honor the coal miners with a parade and a luncheon. However, it also draws many local and state politicians to the area to do a little campaigning.
Thank you, Governor Campaign. Thank you, soon Senator to be, United States Senator Mark Warner. You made us proud, didn't you?
And you should have been a Hutton, and they would have said, E.F. Hutton speaks, or Congressman Boucher speaks. They listen to you also. We appreciate
One of the most revered traditions of the town is in April. It's the reopening of the world's first exhibition coal mine.
On behalf of the mayor, our town council, and the residents of Pocahontas, Virginia, we certainly would like to welcome each and every one of you to our grand reopening of the exhibition mine and museum.
We just like seeing each and every one of you come out.
Present.
The men who owned this mine had the foresight to leave a portion of it for us today. Although coal camp life is past, it is history. Please, please continue to preserve your stories. Don't see what is gone. See what is remaining.
Daddy was a miner, just like his daddy was. I swear we have coal in our blood. I'm a third generation of my family, supported by the company. They would build us houses and they would sell us clothes and take from our scrip what we owe. All we had to do was go down in that hole and mine out those seams of coal. One by one and ton by ton, those train cars would roll down the tracks of our broken backs, loaded with our sweat, blood, and coal. One by one and ton by ton, those train cars would roll down the tracks of our broken backs, loaded
One of the greatest losses suffered by any small town is the loss of its high school. The center of activity and hope typically rests on its shoulders. It is the local source of pride and promise for the next generation.
I should have known. Why didn't I see?
It really is important that they don't close it because of the community, Ebbs Valley, Vazavane, and the surrounding areas. It's going to just make a ghost town out of everything if they close our high school.
Adversity is not something that we are unfamiliar with, but we don't like people pressing us up against the wall and trying to knock our teeth out.
During the fight to save Pokie High, I saw something I never believed I would witness in my lifetime. I saw an entire community that came together to fight together in one accord for what was right.
Everyone knows that we have fought a hard fight to save Pocahontas High School. Pocahontas High School represents the relationship of this town and Cole better than any other material item you could find.
I argue that these issues should have been attacked and fought as they arose and not at the 11th hour. I vowed to you that I would fight tooth and nail to keep that school open.
But, I mean, I can name them and name the people that graduated from Pocahontas High School has good jobs. They talk like our children didn't do nothing.
And what is the status of the school? Is it going to stay open, closed? Don't know. Is it still just
as of right now? At this day, we won't know till the 27th of March. It needs to stay open. You know, we depend on our school for economic development in this area. We have to keep our school.
But they don't give it a chance because of the president who went in up here. It may build up as more people come here. They should give it a chance before they decide to close it.
There's no question economic development does not happen in communities that you pull schools out of. That's absolutely 100% fact. In the same regard, the tax basis in communities where there's no economic development goes down. So Tazewell County, and Mike Himes said this at a Board of Supervisors meeting, Tazewell County has a lot to lose by closing Pocahontas High School.
If our children goes to another school, they will not be treated like they ought to be treated.
Which school would they have to go to?
Graham, Tassel, Capital, William.
They would be rejects. Sorry.
Because they come from a small town, or just because they come from Pocahontas?
Because they come from Pocahontas. They don't like the Pocahontas Indians. We have a good ball teams.
In 1974, Miss Edna Moore-Drozick thought there was a need to have a ceremony remembering and honoring the 114 miners killed in one of the major mining accidents in American history, the explosion of Pocahontas East Mine on March 13, 1884.
Exist even after being beaten down that night at Pocahontas, and that was such a sad situation to see the students of Pocahontas walking out crying, and the mayor said, "Pocahontas will survive." You know, she's got that passion, and that's what it takes. If there's enough people has enough passion, Pocahontas will always be here.
With the remoteness of the area, difficult circumstances, and very little economic activity, the question is, what keeps people here?
And it's all centered on place. That's our common ground. It brings us together.
Here's a picture of my great-grandfather and also my grandfather.
In Pocahontas mines in 1951, I brought the last shuttle car of coal that came out of it.
The people loved each other. If someone died, everyone brought food, and they came and offered their sympathy to everybody.
People ask that question, well, why would you stay, or why do you stay in Southwest Virginia?
We have made a good living in the coal mines, and I'm thankful.
My great-grandfather, who was a Confederate soldier in the Civil War, and my great-grandmother, Melissa Gregory Gravely.
Virginia. Well, why would you stay? And I think that's part and parcel of the real struggle that's at the heart of American experience, to be honest with you.
And I'm thankful that we spent time here, and I still have friends and relatives here.
My grandfather's older brother, Willis, was killed in the mines in 1907. Is buried up on top of Pilchester Mountain, where also my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother's buried.
We have it in our heads that success and membership in the American middle class necessitates mobility and necessitates pulling yourself up and moving on. And I don't agree with that.
They pulled everything out at 69 of 85. And that finished me up in the coal industry.
But they didn't leave the bodies at the funeral home like they do now. When someone died back then, they brought them home, and they displayed them in the living room, and the whole town came by.
Consider it my home for a short while. Now, thank you.
Place and commitment to a place and the struggle for the future of a place and to make a place a safe and a healthy and a good place for all of our people is what we need to be about. That kind of question that says, why are you leaving, or why wouldn't you leave? I was in a meeting a number of years ago where this person was being bragged about, and they had lived their entire career, their entire life, working in institutions, going to colleges in and around a major urban area, a particular urban area. Never lived anywhere else. And this person was praised for their sophistication and their erudition and their intelligence. But those of us that have lived our life in Southwest Virginia the whole life and never gone anywhere, well, I mean, certainly traveled, but never lived outside the region for very long or something. Somehow why isn't that praised for the same erudition, the same kind of sophistication? I don't know. And I think that is part of those values that are out there that are saying, well, in order to be successful, you've got to leave this place. It's not just economic development. And economic development means more than job creation. It means health care, it means education, it means infrastructure. It means all of these things that make a quality life possible.
I probably won't live to see this town brought back, because I'm 75 years old. But I hope that my grandchildren will see this town rebuilt. Pocahontas, Virginia is the only place that I have ever called home.
Pocahontas is an Indian word that means a bright stream between two hills.
You were as young as 6 years old. You could work right here. They'd have a sheet hanging right here and another sheet right here, and you were called a trapper boy. Even the girls were called trapper boys. I would have protested that. They worked a 12-hour shift. They stood here in the dark They would have those rats jumping up on them. That's how many of the old men around here learned how to whistle. They stood here scared to death all day long. They worked a 12-hour shift, they got paid 7 pennies a day. This is an old baseball uniform. These are the pads. Is this cool? This is just cool. See the baseball? Awesome.
These are all Harleys, look. And this is Pocahontas.
That's
awesome.
Pocahontas.
That's just cute.
That's awesome, Amy. We have the remnants of those early days. We also have the memories of every one of us here has some sort of connection with memories of coal camp life. Although coal camp life is past, it is history. Please, please continue to preserve your stories. Don't see what is gone. See what is remaining.
Any deep dark secrets he had you'd like to go ahead and ask him?
I'm not going to say.
Down from the mountain, come down from the mountain, head to toe and coal. Wash my hands in the river and I take my body home. Round and round that corner, the kids are hauling corn. Mama hollers out, hey children, now your daddy's home. Is a place that you should fear. Take my body to the mountain, but my heart and soul stay here. Sun is going down, but the work is hardly done. Girls go down the hill to the well to make a water run. Boys are cutting wood, quarter so we're gone. Sit down to the dinner of bacon back at home. Daddy, will you take us to the mountain? Said the coal mines is a place that you should fear.